There are 183 historical markers in the city of Atlanta. Now, out of those 183, 142 are Civil War related, nearly 80%. And out of those 142, 109 were erected between 1952 and 1958, when there was a resurgence of interest in the Confederacy and the cult of the lost cause. Marking history is as much about the pressures and anxieties of the present as it is about the past. So the Confederate markers of the 1950s seem like unconscious reactions to the escalating racial tensions in the South at that time. Now, the Civil War is certainly a key part of Atlanta history. The Battle of Atlanta, fought on July 22, 1864, is a key moment of the war, kind of the beginning of the end for the Confederacy. But the historical markers in Atlanta present a lopsided view of the city's history, privileging the Civil War above all else. The Civil War even seems to envelop markers that aren't primarily about the Civil War, like this one at Georgia Tech. The founding of the school gets a quick blurb, and then the narrative of the Battle of Atlanta takes over. That's not to say that there aren't quirky or mysterious touches in some of Atlanta's historical markers. Take this one for the Gilbert Memorial Cemetery. In the final paragraph, it's noted that the cemetery was destroyed by unknown persons in the late 1950s. Who would destroy a cemetery? Gilbert was primarily a cemetery for the black community, so was the destruction a hate crime? The award for the funniest and strangest historical marker in Atlanta definitely goes to the Saga of Gold-Toothed John, which stands near where Piedmont Road meets I-85. It's about the crusty handyman of an old Atlanta landowner whose ghost supposedly still wanders around the Holiday Inn looking for bullets. What Atlanta's historical markers neglect speaks volumes. Not a single marker commemorates the civil rights struggle, and while there are a couple markers about Atlanta's writers, the ones you would expect, the lack of coverage about Atlanta's rich cultural history is striking. Take music. Why isn't there a marker outside the old Royal Peacock, which was the preeminent African-American music venue in the city in the 20th century? And why isn't there a marker on Nassau Street, where Fiddlin' John Carson cut what is regarded as the first commercial country music record on June 14, 1923? But I'm not saying that we simply need more historical markers in town, like in London, where it seems like there's one about every 5 feet. Maybe the markers in Atlanta could be just a little cooler. They don't need to be dry like an encyclopedia entry. They can be cryptic and associative, like this assemblage of words and phrases on the walls on Central Avenue leading down to Decatur Street. But the real issue is how history gets remembered or forgotten within a specific place. The common complaint about Atlanta is that we continually knock down our buildings and our past in the never-ending rush of development. But even bulldozed places can be marked so communities can remember what was once there and still feel bitterness about what was destroyed. But there's plenty of history that surrounds us every day that is just waiting to be recovered. I lived on a street in the Virginia Highland area for 4 years before a neighbor told me that a prominent building on the street had been owned by the KKK in the early part of the 20th century and that it had been used as an educational center for the Klan. It's not the building you see pictured here. I'm not sure exactly what is taught at a Klan school, maybe the proper ways to be intolerant, but I was floored that I drove or walked by this building every day for 4 years and had no idea about its unsettling history. I'm sure there are plenty of people who currently live on the street who don't know the building's history as well. The answer isn't to put up a historical marker outside this building. That's too bureaucratic of a solution. There needs to be an easier and more democratic way of marking history within public places. I certainly don't think that technology is the default solution for most problems, but in this case, I think technology could help. Perhaps communities could develop something like a local, place-based Wikipedia, a site where people could post information, anecdotes, sounds, and images of the street, neighborhood, or area of town they live in. And if one visited these actual places with a portable, internet-capable device, these traces would suddenly wash over the visitor. An oral history from the 94-year-old woman who lives on the corner would play, street maps from decades ago would appear, and home movies shot in the area would fade in and out. This would probably be too unwieldy and complicated a project to realize, but if it was, it would more effectively connect people to the history of the places they live in. The past wouldn't be some dry or distant thing, but would swirl around in the ether of the present.